In June 2019, Tim Taylor and his team decided to investigate an American submarine that once mysteriously disappeared. With a remote-controlled underwater vehicle, they decided to begin their investigation until they made a bizarre discovery. And believe us, this will make the hairs on your arms stand up. Tim and his team chose to use a remote-controlled underwater vehicle to investigate the U.S. submarine. While this unit was moving to its destination, an error suddenly occurred. Unfortunately, the underwater vehicle had to be retrieved. Just to be sure, Tim checked the data captured by the underwater vehicle, and then he made a bizarre discovery. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The submarine that had mysteriously disappeared was called the USS Grayback, or SS-208. The search for this submarine was conducted as part of the Lost 52 project. This project consists of finding 52 American submarines that disappeared in World War II. The Grayback was reported missing by the U.S. Navy in March 1944. That's quite some time ago. On February 24, the Grayback embarked on a combat patrol from Pearl Harbor. The submarine sent a message back to base saying they had hit 2 Japanese freighters. On February 25, they sent another message with the news that another vessel had suffered serious damage. The Grayback had done well, but now had to sail back to the Midway Atoll for it to be resupplied, the February 25 message reported. However, no one expected this to be the Grayback's last message. The naval commander expected the Grayback to dock at Midway Atoll around March 7, but nothing could be further from the truth. 3 weeks later, the Grayback still hadn't arrived, so the sub, including its 80 crew members, was reported missing on March 30. This was, of course, extremely tragic, as dozens of men had left their families and loved ones alone as a result. The Grayback had also been a real asset to the U.S. Navy, but the vessel had disappeared into thin air. The Grayback was one of 74 submarines built during World War II. The Grayback was a Tambor-class vessel, of which 12 were built. The Grayback was a large vessel. At its widest point, the vessel was about 8 meters wide and 90 meters long. At low speed, the submarine could remain submerged for about 48 hours. The Grayback was well equipped, too. There were 10 torpedo tubes on the vessel and several 50-caliber machine guns and cannons. These weapons were intended to defend against airborne attacks, but could also be used to attack enemy ships when the Grayback surfaced. After construction of the Grayback was finished, it took off on multiple missions across the ocean. The Grayback won many battles with other ships and managed to get through everything, until the Grayback left for its 10th mission, which turned out to be its last. This was on January 28, 1944. During this last mission, the Grayback single-handedly sank no less than 594 tons of Japanese vessels. What exactly prevented the Grayback from returning to its destination? This remained a mystery at that time. The U.S. Navy believed that the submarine, including its 80 crew members, had sunk about 100 miles, 160 kilometers off the Japanese island of Okinawa. The information the U.S. Navy believed was based on documents kept by the Japanese at the time. It turned out that a number had been mistranscribed by the U.S. Navy when the document was translated by them. Because of this small mistake, the Grayback was much further away from the location that was passed on to them years ago. Many years later, in 2018 to be precise, Tim decided to reinvestigate the Grayback's disappearance. Tim is the founder of the Lost 52 Project, a venture that works to locate 52 submarines that disappeared without a trace during World War II. Using a remote-controlled robot, Tim and his team decided to search for missing submarines. For example, they already found a number of missing vessels during previous investigations. Thanks to the remote-controlled robot, they could take pictures of the wrecks. Tim and his team were also able to inform the relatives of the cause of their disappearance. Because a huge number of submarines were sunk during the Second World War, a lot of people died. In total, 3,505 were killed. With the Lost 52 project, Tim wants to help the bereaved better cope with the loss of their loved ones. He also wants to use the images of the submarines found for educational purposes. To continue the search for the Grayback, Tim contacted Japanese researcher Yutaka Iwasaki. He asked him to search the files of the Sasebo base. These were documents used by the Imperial Japanese Navy during World War II. These important documents contain details of NAHA's daily radio updates on Okinawa Island. This island once housed a Japanese naval air facility. As Iwasaki checked the documents, he found a crucial single-digit error. The error had been made in the transcribed version of a report radioed to Sasebo from Naha on February 27, 1944. You read that right? February 27. This was several days after the Grayback made its last call to base. The message sent by the Grayback on February 27 described an attack by a Nakajima B-5N bomber. This Japanese torpedo bomber apparently fired a 230-pound bomb at the submarine. Unfortunately, the submarine was sailing above the waves at the time. The message then described that the vessel was hit behind the conning tower. The ship was blown up and soon sank to the bottom. Not a single member of the crew survived this tragic event. Iwasaki says that the attack was very clearly described in the Japanese war files. The coordinates were also indicated. Amazingly, these coordinates marked a location more than 100 miles from where the U.S. Navy thought the ship disappeared. This allowed Tim and his team to search for the Grayback again. This new information ensured that they would be able to find the vessel this time. And yes, the team was able to locate the submarine thanks to the new coordinates. The team found the submarine, with the hull appearing almost untouched. Very extraordinary, as the vessel had been lying on the bottom of the ocean for years. While the team was very happy with this discovery, it also caused mixed feelings. In the New York Times, Tim described the discovery as, "We are happy with the find, but it also feels sad. We have found the ship on which 80 crew members died." Relatives of the killed crew members reacted with sadness to the news. They also saw the finding of the Grayback as a consolation. The discovery of the Grayback moved the relatives strongly. For example, one of the loved ones of a deceased crew member told CNN, "The discovery puts an end to the questions surrounding the Grayback's disappearance. I believe it can also bring healing to the bereaved when family members come together to share their stories." The relative also says that the news of the Grayback's finding came as a shock to her at first, but later it brought her comfort and peace of mind. Finding the Grayback not only caused a lot of emotions for the surviving relatives, but it meant much more. After the vessel was found, a second Grayback submarine was made. It was commissioned 14 years after the first vessel sank. The craft was launched by Mrs. Virginia S. She is the widow of the Grayback's original skipper, Commander John A. Moore. The new Grayback is slightly better than the previous one. For example, the weapons on the 1950 submarine include guided missiles, an innovation not available when the first Grayback was launched in 1941. The new variant of the Grayback has made many different trips since its existence, and despite the fact that it is basically an ordinary submarine, the ship will forever carry a special story with it.